My name is Brian Watkins. I'll be your teacher in Accounting 231. We're going to learn Excel and QuickBooks. And there's a lot of tests in this class. Essentially every week there's a test, and you have a week to prepare for and get ready for the project that you're going to do. This video will concern Excel number 1. So I'll do just a couple things I won't do in other videos. Let me just remind you that each module has to be completed in order. And the first thing that you'll pull up will be the formatting rules of thumb. I'm not only trying to teach you how to do good Excel work, I'm trying to teach you how to mimic a style that your customers or boss have come to expect. So there are some very strict formatting rules that I'll grade you on to test you in just following directions. Essentially, that's all it is, following directions. However, if you turn in junk that doesn't look anything like my formatting rules of thumb, if the numbers are right, I'll give you 90%. I don't want your grade to be significantly based on some arbitrary rules. I'm only going to put 10% of the grade on those arbitrary rules. But I want you to try and get them just right so that you can build the skill of preparing work product the way your clients and your supervisors expect it to look. In our class, I will always give you the test ahead of time. So here is exam 1. The grayed out portion up here are the numbers that will change when you get this test in the testing center. So you're going to watch this video after we have the lecture, of course. You're going to practice it. And when you think you can do the whole thing, you go into the testing center, start to finish, follow these directions here on the left, and prepare the spreadsheet, just as I do in this sample video. All right, so let's start by opening a new spreadsheet. So take the button at the lower left, and you're going to open Excel 2016. There is a right-click option to open a spreadsheet. Do not use that option because that will mess with the timing of your work that I use to grade. So the first thing you should do, go to File, open a new file, blank workbook. Okay, so here's book 1. This is a workbook. Workbooks have numbers of pages in them, and there's all kinds of fun stuff about spreadsheets that we'll be learning. But essentially, if you've gone through those original 5 short videos, you understand that each of these cells has an address, and we can manipulate numbers that are stored in each cell. So before we go on with our work, save your work. Okay, this is a protection to you so that you don't lose it. So I'm going to put this there, and I'm going to call my work Fixed Payments Amortization Schedule. You, of course, would say Accounting 231, Test 1, and your last name, something that I could tell you apart from everybody else. All right, so here is our spreadsheet. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the spreadsheet easier to work with by taking columns A through G, and then right-click on your mouse, and you'll see a column width command. Okay, we're going to do a loan schedule that's going to be on a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with the narrow side up, which is called portrait mode. So we're going to take these columns and we're going to widen them to a 12. Okay, so to get to this, it's a right-click, column width. If you don't see column width, it's because you haven't selected the columns. So when I'm selecting this, I'm not doing something like this. That's cells only. I'm clicking on the A, dragging it to the G, and then right-click, column width 12. Okay, you'll notice now that we have A through G are a little bit wider than these other cells. I'm going to now, let me pull a video down so you can see this. In the bottom right-hand corner is the zoom bar, and I'm going to zoom this up to fill more of the page just to make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. All right, looking at our test, our first key requirement is to prepare a title section as explained in the formatting rules. All right, a title section starts in cell A1 and you're going to bold and underline some text. Now, I can bold by doing Control B and Control U, and those toggle these buttons that are found right here in the Home ribbon. And I'm going to start by giving the name of the test, which is exactly what is on the test paper. Fixed Payment Amortization Schedule. Bold and underlined. Hit Enter. Okay, now we've just put text into the cell A1. If I put a number in B1 or any other piece of information, you're only going to see this part of the cell. So always be aware that when you're seeing the whole line, that just assumes that there's blank cells behind it. Okay, line 2. Line 2 will always say, prepared by your name. Okay, so put your name there, prepared by you. And then the third says prepared on, and the date. Today just happens to be July 6th. Okay, the most important part of your title is the purpose section, because this is going to explain to the user what you're trying to accomplish with this spreadsheet. And you'll find that it'll be a helpful reminder to you what you programmed the spreadsheet to do. Remember, you'll have hundreds of these things on your computer. So just take a moment and figure out exactly what you're doing. So this spreadsheet prepares a loan schedule showing the monthly payments on a fixed interest loan with a fixed period of up to 30 years. The schedule will show the month and the amount of principal and interest paid in that month. Okay, so here's a purpose statement. Now, I want to give you a little bit of an Excel skill here that's not widely used, but should be. What we're going to do, all of this that we've just typed, if I put my cursor right there, I could actually pull down my formula to see what's going on in there. But all of this is in cell A4. So when I hit enter, it's all there. And all of this will run way off the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bubble inside our spreadsheet that follows word processor kinds of commands. So I'm going to hold the shift key down and use the right arrow to go to G. Okay, or I could just, let's go back to the beginning, I could click with my mouse on A4 and then drag my mouse over to G. Okay, this is the width of our page. Now here is the alignment box. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit these buttons in order. We're going to merge the cells, then we're going to wrap the text. That makes it go from line to line. And then these three buttons tell whether a piece of text is at the top, middle, or bottom of a cell. Make it top. And then this says whether it's left, right, and center. We're going to make it left. Okay, 4 buttons. Merge, wrap, top, and left. Now, the next thing we do is go between the 4 and the 5 until we see the 2 arrows. Then click and drag the row down like this. Okay, now to adjust it just right, we're going to put the bottom right there on our last line. Okay, now what we've done here is we've created one big cell that's called A4. See up there in the name box? This is cell A4. Don't use merged cells for numbers. It'll only cause trouble. But what we've done here is created a cell that will wrap the text. See how right now it goes right off that first line, but if I hit wrap text, it automatically fills it in like as if it were a word processor. Okay, you're going to do one of these sections on every one of your Excel exams. They get easier as you practice them, but there are points for each of those steps that I took. All right, so let's look at our test again. Now we're going to provide a data section that includes the user data above, as well as extra calculations shown in the video, which I'll go through, that are necessary to do the loan schedule. There's going to be some things you need to memorize and some things you don't. That's why I suggest you practice with the sample in front of you, because then you don't waste time memorizing things you don't have to memorize. For example, the purpose statement. You do not have to memorize what I have said here. You just have to tell me something that makes sense about it. Something close to this, but you don't have to memorize it and say it exactly as I do. All right, section headings have a blank line above and below, and they're also bold and underlined, just like our title. So now we have the data section. Sections are going to have a color reference as well. So I'm going to take now and I'm going to go select my whole line of cells. I'm not going to merge the cells. Okay, only do that rarely when you're going to do something like that purpose line. But what I am going to do is change the color of the background. So if I go straight up here to my font, you'll see a paint bucket. Let's give it a light green there. Okay, so now our data section is known by that light green. Before I click out of those cells, I'm going to go to the left to this box, which is the border and shading commands, and I'm going to give it a thick outside border. It's right there. Okay, again, you want the thick outside border. So I click on it. All right, now, a common problem I see with student work is I'll see something like vertical lines in the middle here. If that happens, what you have to do is go to that cell and clear the border. Okay, so you say no border, and then you go back to the whole line that you wanted and reborder it. Okay, now we had a line above and a line below, and what we're going to do now is we're going to start with our data. This is where the user is going to put data in. So we're going to have a home price. We're going to have a down payment percentage, a down payment amount, the amount financed, the interest rate of the loan period in years, and the monthly payment. Okay, now when we're going to do our equations here and put things together, some of you might be familiar with how Excel references every cell in the spreadsheet with a letter for the column and a number for the row. But this can also be given special names. Okay, so I can have home price named in this box. Let's do that real quick. So if I take, let's go here to the E, and I say E8, instead of referring all through my spreadsheet to cell E8, which is hard to know what that means unless you're looking at it, I can call it home price by typing in the name box and hitting enter. Okay, at that point, whatever number I have here is referenced by the variable name home, and you can see it suggesting to me price. And I can link to that variable name. I want you to name your variables. It's a very important skill to have because it makes your spreadsheets infinitely more readable to a boss or to a client who wants to find out how you're calculating things. Because when I look at this, when I look at the formula in cell F2, what I see is home price. I don't just see some cryptic E8. Now, rather than have you type all of these names again, I'm going to show you a little trick. Here's how to do it. Click on home price and drag down until you have selected all of the boxes that have your names in them. Okay, the green border, we say that those are the selected cells. We not only want the cells with the names, but we want one column of blank cells. Okay, so remember that C9, for example, is really a blank cell. Down payment percentage, all those words are in B9. Once we have the names in one column and blanks in another column, I can go up to my formula ribbon. Okay, formulas at the top, and then the defined names section. This is where I'm teaching you how to define names. So we're going to say create from selection. Okay, and the other way to do it is a shortcut called Control-Shift-F3, which you can see there. So if I hit Control-Shift-F3, that's the same as clicking on that button, and it says create names from values in the left column. It automatically saw that I have already typed names in the left, so we're just going to accept that. And yes, I'm going to replace the existing definition because of that example I just gave you. You won't see this when you do it on yours. Okay, so now if I click out, these cells that are joining the cells with the text have got the names. So see home price, down payment percentage, and amount, and it puts a little underscore there for the blanks because you can't have blanks in your name. Now that's good, but we don't want our numbers crammed up against those words like that. So the next thing we do is we move them. So click on the home price, drag all the way down to select those whole cells. These are the cells with names. Then do Control X. Okay, you'll tell you did it right because you see the marching ants going around. Then we're going to go, let's go out to E, and I want my first cell to correspond to this. I could give it a range exactly the same, or I could just say put your first cell here. Either way. And I do this by going Control V, as in Victor. This is the paste command. So what I've done now is I've taken those named cells, see it's gone back to C8, and I've moved them here to the E column. So now cell E8 is named home price. And if I ever lose track of what my names are, I go up to my name manager, click on it, and it tells me what all my names are. Okay, and that might be you're going to need to use this in future projects. So get to know your name manager, because this is the only way you can fix if you make a mistake at this point. Okay, so we'll close that. Let's enter our numbers. The home price, $750,000. Down payment, 0.25. Remember percentages, 0.25. Okay, the interest rate is 0.0425, and the loan period in years is 30. Okay, just because it's our first test, I got those off of the test right here. All right, now, how do we format a data section? There are some particular rules for that. Okay, the first rule is that wherever you have numbers that are entered by the user, I want you to put a background color that's the same color that you used for that section. Okay, so we're going to put a fill color on these two. That tells the user you can put numbers in these boxes and you won't disturb any formulas that might be there. Okay. Next thing we're going to do with the data section, select all of them, and I can format every cell even though there's not numbers in it yet, and I'm going to make these center, left to right. Okay, now they're all centered left to right. The home price, I'm going to use a format called currency. The currency format puts the $ right next to the number and allows you to center it. Okay, so if I make E a little bit larger, you'll see the difference between currency and if you just hit the $, that's called accounting, and it puts a space there. Okay, on the data section, I want you to use currency. Down payment, okay, that's a percentage. Interest rate is also a percentage, but you need to put 2 extra decimals in. See these 2 buttons up here? Add or subtract decimals. And you just want to show the relevant digits, that 0.25. All right, now we're ready to do our first Excel formula. So go into down payment amount. We're going to calculate the amount we're required by the bank to pay before the bank will loan us the rest of the money. If your credit is super good, then you get a 0 down payment. The bank will loan you every penny. But we've learned from the last few years that that's not a good idea. It encourages people to borrow too much. So banks have a down payment, which is a portion of the home price that the buyer is required to pay by themselves. Okay, so you need a payment percentage and you need the home price. When you do formulas in Excel, you always start with the equal sign. And then we're going to take the home price. I'm going to click on it. See, it comes up home price times down payment percentage. I can click on it. That's your first one. So that's so much easier to read than E8 times E9, particularly if your numbers are on one page that you can't see. So this is why I'm teaching you to always name your variables. It makes it much easier to reference those numbers and understand what you're doing. So there's your first formula. It results in a number that needs a format. We're going to give it currency format. Okay, now how much are we going to borrow? Okay, we're going to borrow everything that we didn't bring in the down payment. So the way we figure that out, remember, start with the equal sign. Our home price is $750,000, and we brought $187,500 to the table here. So our amount financed is going to be the home price minus the amount of down payment. Now let me show you a trick here that'll help you save some typing. When I want to do the formula, I can either click on these cells, but let's imagine these cells are far away. I'm going to type home price. As soon as I see it pop up in that lower box there, and it's in a blue background, I hit the tab key and it will pull that background in. So home price minus, let's type amount, AM. Okay, so now if I down arrow to amount financed, I can hit tab, and actually I don't want amount financed, do I? I want down payment amount. There it is. So hit tab, and I get that just right. And you'll see that the color of your variable name corresponds to the color of the box that's wrapping that variable. So that helps when you have multivariable calculations. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm also going to format that as currency. Great. Now we're going to do the monthly payment. Now, one of the reasons why Excel is so widely used is that it has a huge library of formulas. Up here at the top, you can see the financial. These are the ones you're going to live by. But there's logical. You could go over here to math and find things. I couldn't begin to tell you what all these do. There's also for statisticians, engineers. There's database, all kinds of web page stuff. So every time a new version of Excel comes out, they've thought of new formulas that make it easier to use. The formula for a payment on a fixed payment loan is found in the PMT function. So I go equals, because it's going to be a formula, but then I'm going to have the letters that correspond to the formula. PMT. It immediately knows what I'm looking for, calculates payment for a loan based on constant payments and constant rate. That's what I'm looking for. Formulas have to have arguments in parentheses. So the payment, this is giving you actually this pretty calculated calculus function. And I'm not going to throw it up here and confuse you. All you need to remember is you're going to have to show all of these three items here. You're going to have to put those into this formula. So the first one, you see it's bold, you see rate there. Well, that's easy. My rate is my interest rate, which is always given. Whenever you see interest rate, that's an annual percentage rate. So when I click on that rate, that gives me a year's worth of interest. Now, I'm doing a monthly payment, so I need to take that interest rate and divide it by 12/12. Okay, now, in functions, I can put new functions, I can put references to other cells, I can keep going as long as I want, but when I put a comma down, the program then shifts, and now it's looking at NPER, which is number of periods. Okay, so the number of periods of my loan is going to be 30 times 12. Don't forget that we're doing a monthly payment list. So we have to take the number of years and multiply it by 12. Okay, another comma. Now you see that the help bar is on PV, or present value. The present value is the amount I'm starting with, which is the amount financed. I want to get from the bank this $562,500. Now, these other two, the FV and the type, are in brackets, which means they're optional. They're used in another way that we'll do in Project 5. So I'm going to close this function, by putting a set of parentheses. So the functions always have equal sign, function name, parentheses with the arguments or pieces of the function inside. And if I click inside there, I can double check. I could say, what's my rate? There's my rate. There's my number of periods. There's my present value. Okay, when that looks good, hit enter. Okay, Excel follows a convention of always assuming that when a payment is to be made, it's a negative number. Now, we're printing this out for a client. We don't want to explain all of Excel's quirks. So we're just going to tell it, put a positive number there. We do that by putting a negative sign between the equals and the PMT. Okay, two ways of doing that. I just used the formula box, which is up here at the top. But if I took that out, let me show you another way to do that. If I came at this and I hit F2, F2 is edit mode, then I could put the minus here. Okay, so learn both ways of doing it. You can either do it in the formula box or in edit mode. This is our complete data section. Okay, you'll see that there's a lot of little formatting rules, but they'll become second nature as you practice and move forward in the course. Okay, blank line, next section. Let's bring in the test. Okay, provide an answer section that includes the following columns. You don't have to memorize the columns. I've told you what they are. So let's do bold and underline, answer section. Okay, then we're going to go the width of the page. This time we're going to give it a different color because green belongs to the data section. Let's do a light blue for our answer section. And we're going to wrap all of these with a thick border. And I'll explain why we're wrapping the border in a little while when we do our formatting. Okay, another blank line. Then we're going to have our first column, month. Second column is payment. Third column is interest. Fourth column is principal. Fifth column is the balance. Or you could say loan balance. I don't care either way. Now let's format this all at once. So I'm going to select all of my column headings. Column headings are always bold, underlined, and centered. We center them because these grid lines don't print on our final output. And if you don't center, you're going to have your month heading over to the left and your number over to the right, and it doesn't look good. Okay, don't forget to have a month 0. We're going to start with month 0, center it, and then we're going to have 360 months. Okay, so we're going to hard code those, and I'm going to put a couple numbers here just to show. Let's center them up. Now, when these numbers are all selected with the green box, there's a little green square at the bottom here. When I hover my cursor over that green square, it becomes a black cross. If I left click on the mouse and then drag down, Excel is going to count. You see that little box right above the cross says 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to do that all the way until I have 360. Okay, so now that it's 360, I lift up off my mouse button, and there they are. If I haven't centered them yet, center them now, and this will provide a number for each of the months. Okay, our spreadsheet is designed to be flexible. We could have a 1-year loan, or we could have a 30-year loan. So we have to have all the way down to 360, just in case we're dealing with a 30-year loan. So now we have our month numbers. We're going to figure out the payment, interest, principal for each month. But let's start with the balance here. We have to pull down the number that we borrowed, this 562,500. The biggest mistake you could make on this test would be to type 562,500. That would be very wrong because it would freeze your spreadsheet. You want your spreadsheet to be able to adjust to whatever numbers your user enters. So instead of entering the number, enter an equal sign and the name amount financed. That's how you get your numbers from your data section into your answer section. Now, in the answer section, our numbers are going to be lining up on their decimals, so we use comma format, comma style. So click on that. There we go. All right, what's our payment going to be? Well, we know it's a fixed payment loan. It's always going to be monthly payment. So we're just going to click on monthly payment. Monthly payment will always point to this cell. Even when I copy it 360 times all the way down this column, it will always point to the same place. Now, before I copy it 360 times, let's put it in comma format. And then all I have to do is double click that box. You see the green box there? I'm going to hover over it, double click, and that went all the way to the bottom. And the program knew how far to go. It only went as far as I had a number attached to that column, or adjoining the column is a better way to say it. All right, so now I have my payments. When you borrow money on a mortgage, you're agreeing to pay interest at a certain rate, 4.25%. Interest is calculated on any balance that you owe as principal times rate times time. So what's the interest rate? The interest rate, put this in parentheses, is the regular annual rate divided by 12. Okay, that's the rate for 1 month's interest. And we're going to multiply the interest rate times the balance. Now, this is a huge, important Excel skill. I want to refer to the row above me. Okay, for month 1, I want to calculate my interest based on the balance in month 0. Month 2, I want it to calculate based on month 1, and so on. So I wouldn't use the words amount financed, because that would always be the same balance. And I want this balance to change. So I'm going to click on the cell, and I'm going to go with just that F19 reference. This is called a relative reference. And when I copy this formula down, so let's make it a comma, and then I copy it down. Okay, if I look at the formula, that F19, when I copied it down, became a 20, 21, 22, and all the way down. That's what we want, because we want the interest to always be calculated on the prior month's balance. Okay, now, as I'll tell you in class, mortgages are the most evil thing devised by finance people. They're evil because they hide the amount of interest you're paying. You think you're paying $2,700 a month on your house? You're not. You're really paying $2,700 minus the amount the bank has earned. You're really only paying yourself about 1/3 of that payment. And the bank wants to hide that from you. And the bank does that by making all your payments look the same. So you think you're paying yourself off every month, but you're not. You're really not paying off your loan until the very end. And this is the way the bank hooks you. Okay, so what's the balance now? The balance is not $562,500 minus $2,700. It's not minus the payment. It's only minus the principal. So remember that. Okay, the balance of the loan is the prior month's balance, but only minus the principal. It's only the principal that you're paying back to yourself. The interest is what the bank has earned. Okay, so now I'm going to take these. I can do 2 at once. And I'm going to copy them all the way to the bottom. Double click. Okay, so now you see the great secret of a mortgage. And that is that you're really paying yourself next to nothing until you get to the end. And at the end of this, in 30 years, you're paying thousands to yourself every month. Now, let me tell you the secret. The secret is to get a mortgage with a payment that's half of what you can afford. If I can afford 27, then instead I would get a mortgage that would have like 15. And then I would pay 2 payments a month. So if I paid another $2,700, look at this. I've just advanced myself almost 3 months with 1 payment. Okay, so if people understand interest, if they look at calculations like this, they realize that it's to their best interest to pay as much as they can. All right, so we're almost done. Let's take a look at our test. Test says ensure your columns are wide enough that your numbers display correctly. Great. When finished, save your work and continue following your instructions. By the instructions, I'm referring to the test instructions here that you're looking at. Okay, so let's do that. Let's finish up by looking at our print. You always want to look at your output here. What's going to happen when you hit print? So I go File, Print, and I can see because my thick lines don't follow right here that I've chopped off my last column. See, my words aren't right. So that's why I do those wrapping it. It will always remind you or show you if you've lost a column. So we go back. You can see the dotted line here. So I'm going to shrink my G column up until that dotted line goes out. Now I've got the whole column. Okay. I usually keep blank columns on either side of my numbers so that I can adjust the numbers left to right. One more thing that you're required to do, and that is to put a file page footer onto your test. Okay, it's easily done, but it's a sequence of steps that you have to learn. So we're going to go Page Layout, then Print Titles, then Header Footer, then Custom Footer, and then you're going to use the file path. Okay, don't use anything else. We just want to know where did this printout come from. You'll have a file on your client, and a year after you do this, the client will call up and say, hey, I want a new updated whatever it is you're doing. If you do this, I'm going to do it in the center. I like it better in the center. Okay, hit OK. Then, when you print it out, every page, let's look at the bottom of this page here, I'll adjust it, will have the full file directory information to go back to your original hard drive and find this program. And you think, oh, you know, I don't need to worry about that. But trust me, you'll have hundreds of these things on your computer before too long, and it helps you to know where to look. Okay, so now you want to take your work and save it. File, Save. Okay, if you haven't given it a name, make sure to give it a name. Very important, because otherwise, if you just went to upload, it would be an empty file. Okay, you need to make sure that you have the right information stored before you go and try to upload it. So there's my file, and what I'm going to do when I grade you is I'm going to come along and I'm going to look at when it was created at 220, and when was it last modified, 312. Okay, you have to do this in 30 minutes. I've taken a little longer than that because I'm stopping to explain things. But if you look at your exam, you're given 30 minutes to complete the exercise. Why do we want it done fast? Because if you're going to practice this, you need to practice for speed. That way you're a good employee, and it also shows that you're comfortable with Excel. I'll go over grading rules in class, but essentially if you don't name a variable, that's 10 points. If you don't use names in your formulas, that's a 5-point error for each formula. So when I go along here, I'm going to check it by looking to see if you used names in the right places and you used relative references in the right places. Okay, let's go back to the names here. And if you just screw up the formula, it's 5 points per formula. Formatting errors are 2 points each, but there's a mercy rule. The most you'll lose is 10 points. Now, spelling. Spelling is the easiest thing in the world to check. Okay, before you turn it in, hit the F7 key and then say yes. Spell check complete. I take 2 points off for every spelling error. Those are just inexcusable. You can spell check anything. So make sure you check for spelling errors. Hard coding. Okay, hard coding errors are when you take a number like this balance here that should be referenced above. Because what happens if I change this to an $800,000 loan? You see how all the numbers changed right away? If I had hard-coded that, it wouldn't change. Hard-coding is a form of cheating. Sometimes I'll have students they know what the number should be. They can't figure out the formula, so they type the number hoping that I don't check that. I always do check that, so don't do that. Finally, the spreadsheet has to work. It has to amortize, meaning it has to go to 0 in the last month of the loan. So if it's a 30-year loan, it goes to 0 in 360. If it were a 10-year loan, 10 times 12 is 120, I'd want to see that 0 at month 120. And there's the 0. Okay, and we're almost done, but there's one last thing. If you look on your key requirements, I ask that your columns be wide enough that if you enter 10 million as the home price, they display correctly. So let me show you what I mean. If we put 10 million here, you see how that balance column just went to hash marks? That means it needs to be a little bit wider so that it can display the full number. If that were to cause your G to be lopped off, meaning if your dotted lines went back to here, then you could shrink up your A a bit like that to balance it. Okay, but once you've checked the number, be sure to put the original number back. Okay, don't fall for that. Now, if it's too narrow, okay, you're going to see hash marks. Let me make this so narrow. That's what these hash marks mean, that the column's too narrow. So the E column is going to be just a little bit wider. It's going to be like a 14 almost. Let's see here. Okay, so that's what I mean by making it wide. You adjust the width by going between the two and squeezing it, or adjusting it any way you want. I'm moving it left to right. I'm going to just back that out there. Okay, so be sure to check that. That's our first project. We're finished. If you have questions, come to the accounting lab Monday through Thursday, 7 through 11, room 119 of the Grant Building. Find a TA. Email me. I'm watching my emails most of the time. And don't wait until the night before the test. Practice this until you're comfortable, and the practice only needs to be 20-30 minutes a day. Just do it regularly, because it's more important to get this into your fingers than into your head, and that'll make more sense the farther you go in the course.